Welcome back to the Goldmark Gallery and to the curious kingdom of Sid Burnard. We've got a really delightful exhibition to show you today of driftwood sculptures by Sid. Now, if you don't know of Sid's work already, you might get a feel for the kind of fun that we can see in this room around us. He's an artist who works with found pieces of driftwood, with detritus that washes up on the seashore, particularly along the west coast of Wales, where he spent many a year walking up and down the stretches of the pebbles in rock pools, finding the kinds of pieces of wood, of plastic, of rope, of dried up seaweed that we'll see being put to imaginative use today. Sid is I hope he doesn't mind me saying this, he's a small man with a very big imagination. And it takes a real eye to pick out the pieces that he does as he walks along the coast, looking out along the seashore in front of him, trying to find things that will work into some of the compositions that we see today. What makes Sid's work so special is that everything that you see here has not been altered. Sid does not cut, he does not carve, he does not colour. All of the beautiful colour, the texture, the variation in the surfaces that we see in these pieces of wood that have been put together, the pieces of plastic, are entirely the work of the sea, of the sun, the salt, the wind, the rain, the waves, of material bashed against the rocks, until finally Sid has been able to find them and give them a new home. He's a kind of real-life Dr. Dolittle, except that Sid talks to wood and not to animals. These pieces seem to call out to him from the shoreline, and it's back in his studio that he's able to pair them up with each other to create the kind of extraordinary creatures like this one behind me, made from a CD-ROM drive, some strange float, and a beautiful piece of washed up wood. Like the many pieces of flotsam and jetsam that have been put to use in this exhibition, Sid has lived a long and varied and colourful life. It's many different jobs, occupations, sort of strange wanderings up and down country that brought him to this world of driftwood. But over the last 20 years or so, Sid has been dutifully putting together these beautiful compositions, these birds, these creatures, from the pieces of wood that he collects in his studio. We had our first show in 2012, a second in 2016, and this is the third, 6 years on. And in that time, Sid has been putting together some 100 new creations for this exhibition, many of which are on display here. And they show, obviously, that Sid is a man with great wit, with great imagination. When you take a look at some of these pieces, what astounds me is how closely Sid is riding that line. They're never actually as straightforward as they might appear. They're often very minimal, maybe 2 or 3 different component parts that have been simply brought together to create the kinds of creatures that we see here. What's beautiful about them is that take these parts away, take away this strange, curled over, warped and dried out shoe sole here. Take away this beautiful, weather-worn piece of wood, this pebble, a few iron bars, and this plank here. Separately, once removed, the illusion of this bird disappears. But there's something about the way that Sid is able to read this kind of material, to read the positions, the kind of the character, the movement within a piece, that allows him to bring these disparate parts together, and suddenly there is a bird as real as any we might see out in the real life world. You can see from the extraordinary texture on some of these pieces of wood, dried out pieces of seaweed, that the process that a lot of these component parts has been through is long, it's severe, it's weathering. It's wood that's been bleached hard by the sun, it's been soaked in salt, sometimes for months, years on end. And as you can imagine, it's no mean feat getting these pieces back to Sid's studio, where they may have to wait years before they are fully dry and able to be paired with their component parts. Just thinking about something like this magnificent bird, the beautiful movement through this wood, the sharpness of these feathers and this angle, which has been beautifully paired with this lovely round stump. Imagine a piece like this, heavy on its own, but when Sid found it, it would have been soaked, it would have been drenched with salt water, it probably would have been twice as heavy as it is now. And Sid would have lugged this thing back with him from the beach right the way up, maybe caught the bus back to his studio, all that time with his precious cargo in hand. Sid has been honing his eye on this kind of material for many years now, way beyond when he first started to put compositions like these together. He charts it back to a childhood spent on the beach with his Romany grandmother, telling him to go and look for a piece of pencil. But over the years, he has developed a keen sense of what will work in a composition and what will not. And when you look at the amount of detritus that washes up on our beaches these days, what he might find in a single day along a stretch of coastland, it becomes more a case of what not to pick up, or rather, what is the best material to select, what can be best put to use. And each time he commits one piece to another, for example, a head to a body for a bird to a base, he feels he's making an incredibly important decision. He's committing this material to a new life together. And so he has to think very, very carefully, very, very hard about each time he does that. The other thing that you'll see in this show is that not only has Sid got a razor eye for picking out these pieces of wood amongst the sand, amongst the water, amongst the seaweed, but he's also got a beautiful sense of the mannerisms of creatures, of how animals hold themselves, how birds react in different situations, how their body changes. He's a real naturalist. You look at some of the birds we've got on these shelves here, something like this sort of gull-like figure, all hunched up and squat and everything's contained. You can feel the power within this piece of wood. It's been beautifully set on low on these little wire legs here, so that it has all of that hunkered feeling of a bird maybe standing on a post in the wind, the rain whipping past it, withering out its life on the coastline. Or something like this beautiful little bird, whose face is an old light switch. And it's got this beautiful body that flicks up into a tail. It's alert, it's sprightly, and the way it's been placed again on this block has this feeling of a bird watching the world around it, ready to pounce up and fly at a moment's notice. Other artists who've used refuse material in this way, people who've picked up the discarded remains of what people don't want and given them a new life, people like Kurt Schwitters. Pablo Picasso made his bricolage bronzes out of assemblages of strange found pieces. But what I think is so important and so beautiful about Sid's work is there's such a sense of fun to it. There's such a kind of a life-affirming warmth to the pieces that he puts together. We've got a couple on this shelf. This fantastic tractor, this red tractor made from some strange washed-up piece of plastic, I think, with this beautiful spring tail of steam coming here, this puff of steam coming out the front of the tractor here. Or something as beautifully restrained as this strange exotic bird with this tail, this red cone for a beak, and this fluffy fringed body. It's got so much character to it, so much life to it. I think in the world of art, in the world of art galleries, we can be too concerned with things being serious, with things being studious, with kind of having to justify the work. What I love about Sid's is that it's relaxed. It simply lets these pieces to come together, and it produces work that's not just enjoyable and fun and makes you smile, but it's also moving. It tells us something about the world and about the world around us, how we treat that world. And the ecological message, if you will, behind these sculptures is not lost on us. Both the sense of material that we throw away, the profligate way that we waste a lot of the stuff around us, but also the enormous variety, the beauty and the splendour of the natural world, which is often diminishing as a result of our actions. More than any of that, as all great art should, it makes you look again. It makes you question your eyes. It makes you see how someone can put together something like this extraordinary, writhing, sun-bleached form and find in it a strange mythical tree. How this single piece of vegetation here, dried out and placed so perfectly on two wire legs, can become some kind of kiwi-like tree-hopping bird. The more words I use to try and explain and describe these pieces, the more I think I'm going to dispel their magic. So really, I should be leaving you to enjoy the work of Sid Barnard now. This is an exhibition that really has to be seen with the eyes to be believed. The beautiful textures on the wood that have been ravaged by time, by weather, the way that Sid has brought these disparate parts together and found harmonious composition, the way that he's been able to instill life into these inanimate pieces, is a marvellous thing. I do hope you come and visit this exhibition. It's a really eye-opening show. It shows off the genius of Sid Burnard in what he does, the way that he manages to piece pieces together, the way that he can understand, read, reinterpret, reinvent the characters of the birds and the beasts that he sees every day around him. More than that, it's a moment of fun, of joy. It's life-affirming. It's exactly what we need this summer. I hope you come and see these pieces for yourself. And for now, I leave you with the wonder that is Sid Burnard.